In Orkney, we used to have an expression, "I'll be hour with the moon," meaning that I would come and visit you when the moon is full to light my way. Hello, folks, and welcome to another episode of Hour with the Moon. And this time around, me and Rhonda's got a visitor. Hooray! We don't always get visitors.
They don't let them in.
No. We just grab folk off the street sometimes and bag over the head and come in and pretend to be somebody interesting. But we don't need to pretend to be somebody interesting with you because you're a pretty interesting guy. We're delighted to be joined by Gordon MacLellan, who is a storyteller and a poet, an artist, and lots of other things, which will become clear during the course of the conversation. And more importantly, an old pal.
Yes, absolutely.
That's the important thing.
Mm-hmm.
So how are you doing, man?
All right. Surviving. That seems to be the key thing at the moment. Keeping going.
Yes. That's all you can do, boy. KBO, as Churchill used to say. Keep buggering on. But anyway, you can always edit that. But
yes, absolutely. Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
So, I mean, like stories. I mean, you've got a great wealth of stories.
Mm-hmm.
What's the sort of ones that speak to you? And what's, it's such a bloody annoying question. Everybody keeps saying, so, why are you interested in stories? When did you start doing that? And after you've stopped swearing and been calmed down and the police have turned up. But I'm going to probably ask the same question to you.
Go for it. There's no guarantee I'll answer, but we can always hope.
Well, that's funny because it's exciting for me as well. And so how did you get into stories?
I think the quick answer is I have no idea.
Yeah, that's kind of what I do as well.
I know I've been writing stories and making puppets since I was about 10, because I found some of my original exercise books with stories in them. But I've been working as a creative, just making and doing and writing and inventing things most of my life. And when I finally escaped from formal teaching, and got to do environmental education, it always made sense to me that those sort of themes, understanding the world around you, relating to the world around you, works best if you do it creatively. And if you're doing it creatively, you need stories. And for me, it always felt like a very logical progression that moved me deeper and deeper and deeper into working more with stories than with just about anything else. And I have one of those minds disturbances that just holds on to stories. I read them or hear them and they stick.
Well, some of them do. I'm the same, but then there's other ones that just like drifting through the one, logging out the other, and don't stick. But then other ones that you hear and you go, I like that, and you never forget.
Yeah, and it's trusting that the ones that stick are the ones that A, will be good to use, and B, I'll be good to tell because they're the right ones. They're the ones that have embedded themselves somewhere in my soul. So you think, you can tell this story with heart and with honesty and take people on a really strange journey.
Well, that's kind of what we do, really, and nobody knows where you're going to end up. I never understood folk that said, oh, well, what stories are you going to tell? Liz Weir in Northern Ireland, who has just recently broken both her arms, poor dear. So I hope you're feeling better, Liz. So I don't know when time this is going to go. So this could be old news by that time. But she said that, working with festivals in America, as she does, they're writing to her about 2 years or 18 months beforehand saying, what stories are they going to tell and how long are they, how many seconds? And it's like, I have got up in front of an audience and hadn't a bloody clue what story I was going to tell. But had to grab something fast. But I mean, no, it's what's right on the night.
Yeah. And I mean, sometimes I find that sort of moment when you're just standing there thinking, oh dear, yeah, I'm completely blank. And for me, it's always place that does it. And it's looking at the place and just starting to waffle. It's so nice to be here tonight. It's so nice seeing all your lovely faces. Yes. Yeah, you're still alive. I didn't know you were still alive. And all that stuff until something clicks and you just go, oh, yes. I heard about someone who looked a bit like you and go and let it happen.
I once stole a wonderful line from Ivor Cutler at the Scottish Storytelling Centre in Edinburgh. I was on the stage there. And I said, I would like to thank most of you for coming.
Excellent.
I always loved that line. But, so it's just, what stories are the ones that you're drawn to? What do you enjoy telling?
That there's no easy answer there. It's almost completely eclectic. I think the stories I tell most often are stories about the shaping of things, about the giant who became the mountain, about why a river follows a particular course, about where mosquitoes come from. Because a lot of my work is on encouraging people to explore that relationship between themselves and the world around them and recognize that anything and everything can have a story, that there's no hierarchy here. There's nothing, you've always got to have wolves and bears. No, you can have beetles. Beetles are great. Worms are wonderful. There's always a story. And I think those are the ones I tell most. And in many ways, those are the ones that give me a huge amount of joy. And then I really like the dark ones. I can't really tell to 8-year-olds because they start crying. But I love those. I love quite sinister stories and often really old stories. And yeah. Yeah, sorry, there isn't an easy answer to that question.
From Scotland?
It's from Scotland, from Celtic mythology generally, sort of Scots and Irish and Welsh stuff. It's all grist to my mill, I think. And it's, I particularly like, the Irish stories of the Tuatha Dé Danann and that real deep enchantment is beautiful.
Yeah, they're gorgeous stories. But you're an island boy as well, same as myself.
Not entirely. I grew up in Cumbernauld. I've got a family who come from sort of Argyll and the Western Isles, but I
thought you were from one of the Uists.
Well, I've got friends on the Uists and family and Skye, and there are people everywhere.
You see, this is what's different between this podcast and other ones. Other ones do their homework.
But no, I grew up in the wonderful concrete world of Cumbernauld. And if anyone listening to this doesn't know where that is, it's one of the Scottish new towns, sort of halfway between Glasgow and Stirling, where, we moved there mid-60s, I guess. And so it was a population sort of dumped on a town and sort of, become a community. So we didn't.
Well. So, but I mean, it's still the kind of Scottish landscape that inspires you and drives you.
I mean, I live in Derbyshire in England, and we live in the Peak District, which is beautiful. But it's when I come north, particularly when I hit the Highlands, everything starts to sing. That's when it feels like I'm coming home. And one day.
Yeah. But you're also a poet as well. I mean, that's just something else that you've always done?
Yes, I mean, again, a bit like writing stories, I found versions of early poems that are unspeakably bad. But also, I mean, when I was late teens, I was entering the Scottish Open Poetry Competition. I don't think I ever knew who organised that. And that was really good, and I was being placed, sort of in the top 10 and things like that for a couple of years. And I've always, for me, poetry it's my way of almost telling stories without much other than the utter core. It's the real skeleton of a story is a poem, and it's just that tight, brief, concise playing with words that gives you something to take away. And I get very tired of people who talk to me about the difficulty of writing and how heart-rending it is and what a chore it is. And I must suffer for my art. And I think, no. I just think poetry for me is a joy. Even if often my poems are quite dark and often about grim things, but the writing is a delight. It's a real richness in my life to be able to do that.
I love writing as well. And I mean, the older I get, the more I enjoy it. Because when I'm young, idiot, I'm dyslexic and I was avoid writing like plague, But no, there's a real sense of joy in that. I mean, I love to write, but if you get anybody saying that, that they're suffering for it, well, maybe they're not very good.
Yeah, maybe they should be doing something else.
Like cleaning or something.
Yeah.
You got some of your poetry with you.
I did. I do. I've been trying to decide. I still don't know what to read. It's a bit like telling stories. You just close your eyes, open your mouth and hope. That same thing goes on. All sorts of situations.
Apart from open heart surgery, you're kind of hoping that it doesn't,
You're really hoping they've got a bit more nous about them.
Aye. So you're waking up on a cloud somewhere.
Yeah, thinking,
you're deep, but you've got a fabulous nose.
Yeah.
So instead of that, you go, I was going to do a heart transplant, but I'll sort that now. One hell of a hooter they got in,
Yeah. I'm
on thin ice here. The Muir nose, as it's known.
Yeah. Yes, I like writing, and I like writing poetry, and I like reading poetry and telling stories. It's words. I think it's always words. It's that relationship between a teller or a poet and the audience is fascinating, and that, for me, that sense of wonder. I mean, most of the people I tell stories to are children. And to just watch the stillness spread like ripples through, 100 young people who are just sitting there and they've started fidgeting they were fidgeting at the start and picking their noses and nudging each other. And you just watch the stillness spread as they get more and more drawn into a story. And until as the teller, you have no idea what they're taking in because they're not reacting. All those carefully constructed jokes, the punchlines that an adult audience go, you go straight over children's heads. And you think, okay, don't, just trust. And at the end, there's silence. And they have to wait. Or it takes a teacher to suddenly go, oh, quick, applaud. Because they're just still sitting there inside the world they've created using my words. And for me, that is absolute joy, and it's just a delight. And afterwards, if children are talking to me about what we've done and what we've been doing, it's always, that story you told me? And it's sort of, well, actually, I told everyone. But no, they heard it as something that was a personal conversation between me as the teller and them, and you think, that's great. So I'm really glad I've given you a treat, and please take it home. So I was doing some work recently down at Abriachan in the Highlands, and we've been telling stories and making lots of little pirates and inventing the lost stories of Abriachan. And And at the end of it, a mum came to pick up her wee girl. And I met the mother a little while later and said, no, I got a blow-by-blow account of that story. I don't know if it was word perfect. It sounded it. But as soon as she met her daughter all the way back to the car park, Mum said, that little girl was just telling, do you know what that fox did to that rabbit? And she was off. She told me everything. I thought, nah, that's it. That's good. That's special.
I'm always amazed when I'm in at schools and there's, somebody's going, well, because they always ask if you want to be called Tom or Mr. Mew, and it's like, Tom. And they say, oh, well, some of you had him before, and because it turns out that I had been in when they were much peedier,
Yeah.
And then I would say, like, do you remember what stories you had? And some of them bloody do, and it's like, well, I don't even, I've not a clue,
Yes, yeah. You sort of haven't made a list. And then I'm always caught between so do I need to tell you a new one? Or, oh, no, can we have the one where, again? You think, oh, thank goodness. Yes, we'll do that. But
I think that it was beautifully summed up by my old pal Lawrence Tulloch, the late great storyteller for Shetland, who said that when you go along to see your favourite band, if they don't play the hit single, you get disappointed. It's like, oh, they didn't play that.
They're all doing the new album, and it's just not as good as the old stuff.
Yeah, so I mean, you want the favourites.
Yes. Oh yeah. And it's lovely. I mean, it's when you think, actually, that was 4 years ago, 5 years ago, and I told you that story once, and you've remembered it, and it's gone in, and you think, oh, this is good, this is special.
Yeah, it gives hope for humanity, doesn't it?
Well, you hope it does.
Yeah.
I hope it does.
So do I. Because these buggers will be looking after me when I'm old and... I was going to say,
and they'll be poking you in your bed, going, "Come on, Mr. Tom, tell us a story." Well, so you were talking about, are you Tom? I get very confusing because I can't think of the word. I'm Gordon. I'm usually introduced as, "Hello, everyone. I'm Gordon. I'm Gordon MacLellan, but I work as an artist and a storyteller called Creeping Toad. So today, call me Gordon or call me Toad. It's up to you. You can choose."
Yeah, well, Mr. Toad.
Well, it's Mr. Toad, or quite often, you can almost see the swagger that says, well, Toad is one of my friends. And saying, Toad, can I tell you this? Toad, and anything, and yeah, it's good fun.
Where did Creeping Toad come from?
Well, I've been a toad person since I could walk. My mum used to say that your brother and sister would bring friends home, and you'd bring tadpoles in a jam jar. I've always been into toads and frogs and just about anything, amphibian and reptile. And when I set the company up initially in 1985, toad had to be in the title, and creeping felt like the best adjective. And it's crept along, kept going. Yeah.
We've got a wee garden up close here. It's not, because in Stromness you don't get gardens next to your house, so you got to go out the door, up a lane, round the corner, up another lane, up a flight of steps, and then there's your garden.
Yeah.
And we decided to try to make it as friendly to wildlife as possible, So lots of wild flowers, seeds, and instead of having like a lawn, there's just like wildflowers and just masses and masses of blooms everywhere. Things that bloom at different time of year to keep things fit. But we also put in a pond, and we've got tadpoles.
Oh, how lovely!
Well. So, we did kidnap some frog spawn at one stage. And I'll probably get arrested for that. But this year, they came back and did it all themselves. So it's all homegrown, homegrown amphibians. So,
I should then put in my pitch for I'm a trustee for a charity called Frog Life, where we encourage or promote and work on the conservation and restoration of habitats for reptiles and amphibians, and promote a greater understanding and appreciation of them.
Oh,
So,
brilliant.
yeah, it's really nice. It's really interesting.
We don't have newts here. There's none in Orkney.
No, I don't think so. No, I think
No,
you're
there
right.
isn't. So,
You got any snakes?
Nope.
No
Snakes. Never have.
No.
You know,
No, I didn't
it's
think
not
so.
that anything bad happened to them.
No, they just never got here.
Nah, they couldn't afford the ferry fare.
Oh, it's understandable.
You're quite involved in quite a few environmental charities and organisations.
Yeah, probably more organisations than anything. I said that I've been an artist and a maker since I was a child, but I've also been a zoologist. You know, I grew up going to be a zookeeper or just keeping lots of things. I managed to keep lots of things in my bedroom until they escaped. And my mother would find stick insects, cockroaches and voles and all sorts of things at different places in the house. But I'm a zoologist. My formal training is in zoology, and I specialised in terrestrial ecology. And I've never left it behind. And for me, again, the storytelling side of things is how I communicate those ideas best. And that understanding of an appreciation of the world around us is really important. And I'm still involved with my university department. X number of years on, somebody else can do the maths.
Oh, I'm not very good at sums. No.
I graduated in 1981, so all that time ago. But I'm still in touch with Glasgow's, and I can't even speak now, Glasgow University Zoology Department. There we go. And yeah, so I'm involved with that. I'm involved with things at home in Buxton. Yeah, every year in a local nature reserve, there's a big toad migration to a set of breeding ponds, and there's a culvert, a sort of a man-made stream with a very steep wall, and the toads will just keep trying to climb that wall to get to their pond, and they can't climb the wall, but they'll keep trying until they're exhausted and die. So every year during migration, I go down with a bucket, and every morning go and I bring the toad bus to take them all the way to the pond, and there's a whole set of little songs that go with it, and me wallowing about in a stream, picking up toads. So I do whatever I can, I think, wherever I can.
Well, I remember we were out at Happy Valley in Stennis a few years ago, and they'd put in a pond there which had lots of frog spawn in it, and there was some of the frogs were lazy little sods. They just sort of went into a puddle next to the pond. Yeah. And I thought, well, that's going to dry out. Yeah. So I was scooping up all the slimy spawn, carrying it down to the pond. So,
yeah, I mean, toads go for very traditional ponds, the ponds that their colonies are almost always bred in or spawned in. Frogs will just, anything. Puddles, buckets. Yeah.
Glass of water,
next door neighbour's wellies. You know, it's just they have very little taste. Very beautiful, but very little taste.
When I was a kid, I used to go up to Westry because my mother came from Westry, and there was a loch there that was just full of, I don't know whether it was frogs or toads. They used to call them toads, but I think they were actually probably frogs. I'm going back a bit.
Yeah.
And you'd always see loads of them squashed on the road every year because they were, heading off into the loch for a good time.
Yep.
You never see that anymore at all. Well, there doesn't seem to be any in that loch.
Oh.
And I just wondered, is with habitat loss and probably phosphates as well and farming, all that were run off from farmland, is amphibian numbers on a decline, like most things seem to be?
Yes, yeah. Without doubt, frogs and toads in particular, their populations are very susceptible to pollution of those sort of key breeding sites. So that might well be what's happened with yours. They respond really quickly to big environmental changes. So they are talked about generally is one of the real sort of barometers of climate change, is just what happens to amphibian populations. And in Britain, FrogLife coordinates a network of toad patrols who go out usually in March, and every night over the toad migration season, you'll see them with, high-vis jackets and toad crossing signs and buckets helping toads across roads everywhere. So,
see, I'd be doing that. I'd love that. I'd actually.
It's one of those insanely rewarding things.
Yeah.
You think you're picking up wee hoppy people and taking them in a bucket to a pond, and people find such joy in it. It's wonderful.
I shared a tent with a toad once.
It wasn't
Sweden.
me.
No, it wasn't you.
Quickly.
No.
You're quite safe. It wasn't me. Problem.
It was in Sweden, a Viking village. I used to tell stories at Storholmen, and there was I was told that somebody had seen a toad going into my tent. And this was like a Viking tent with a wooden front with carved dragon heads on it and all that sort of stuff. And they said that, I seen this toad going in there, and I went, oh, you saw me? You weren't supposed to see that. But when I dismantled the tent at the end of the season, there was a whopping great, huge toad just underneath this plastic sheet that was on the ground there, just sitting there kind of looking at me. And so I went and picked him up and took him down to the lake and let him go. She seemed quite happy.
If they're extra big, probably a she.
Well, it was quite a size. I mean, it was a big handful. It was a big, huge thing.
That's a delight.
So that's my toad rescue story. My only toad rescue story.
Hi, friends. You might not realize that along with this podcast, Tom and I are building an ever-growing website, Orkneyology.com. It's become a kind of social history archive for Orkney. We've also started an independent micro press called Orkneyology Press, and we have a YouTube channel where you can hear Tom tell a multitude of Orkney stories. Not only folklore, but interesting lesser-known social history like you're hearing today. I wanted to let all of our listeners know that our crowdfunder campaign is going very well, and we're going to leave it on a little longer. So if you've thought about throwing a little something into the creative pot but haven't yet, now is a great time to show your encouragement. You can see what Tom's up to with his upcoming book, Tales in the Landscape, and pitch in if you want to. We really appreciate every one of you. Show notes for this episode are on Orkneyology.com, where you'll find links for everything I've just mentioned. Just look for the podcast tab. Thanks for spending time with us, and enjoy the conversation.
Well, what else are you involved in the way of environmental groups? Because I know there's quite a lot.
I don't know. I never know what to say. I think I just get involved in anything that seems a good thing to be involved in. So I do quite a lot around trees. We sort of not hosted, participated in exhibitions about trees with two other artists at home in Derbyshire. We sort of had a big exhibition celebrating the trees of the Peak District in Buxton Museum and Art Gallery. So do things like that, and have worked with the National Trust and the Woodland Trust and people like that. Again, often either telling stories in, let's say, in woodlands, to get people stopping and looking and just thinking, trees have stories hidden in them. Or quite a lot of what we do just now is creating stories, is getting people to invent, that's wrong, to discover the adventures that might have happened on their street. And that was certainly one of the stories I thought I would tell this evening.
Do you want to go for it?
I'm just, yes.
Well,
yes. I'm now doing the waffly bit where I was trying to think, no, waffle, how does it begin? Because it starts with a little boy who found a key, or a lovely key, a really big, old, rusty key, and he thought, oh, this key must unlock a really special lock. So he went home with this key and just looked at the locks in his house and thought, nah, It's not going to fit any of them, and they're not special enough. And looking at his key, he knew it must be an old key. It held age. So he set off thinking, where? And in those days, which are not these days, there was still a castle on Mouselow Hill between Hadfield and Glossop in Derbyshire. And the boy thought, I bet my key will open a lock in the castle. But the guard who guards the path up to the castle, he's not going to let some grubby wee urchin with a big key through. So he snuck past the guard, and he went up the old cobbled road to the castle gate, and he waited till the lion that was chained up in the castle gate went to sleep. He did try his key in the padlock that chained up the lion, and he was quite relieved when his key didn't fit that one. But then he went into the castle and he tried the throne room door. The key didn't fit. He tried the king's bedroom chamber door. The key didn't fit. The key didn't fit the door to the dungeon. The key didn't fit the lock in the treasure chest. The key didn't even fit the shackles in the dungeon. He just couldn't find the lock the key would fit. And every time he didn't find a lock, he felt more and more certain that he couldn't go home until he found the lock the key would fit. And now, Mouselow Castle is gone. There isn't even a ruin left. There's just some sort of earthworks covered over by grass. The cobbled road is still there. You can still walk up Mouselow Hill. And it said if you go there after dark, on your own, you need to go somewhere, go quietly. And if you stand in the ruins of the castle and just listen, sometimes you still hear the wee boy with the key trying to find the lock his key will fit. And if you are really, really kind, you might help him so he can at last go home.
That's lovely.
And that came from a 9-year-old boy
Oh.
in the library about a month ago.
Wow.
I brought a big set of old keys with me, and he was just went, he picked one up and was just going, this is amazing. And he drew a little boy with a key, and we started talking, and we started spinning all that together. So that's a lot of what I do now, is that sort of
creation.
Yeah, let imagination go.
I've been doing quite a bit of work with schools here recently where they're actually starting to write their own, versions of folktales. But also, more importantly, they're actually telling them. Because they're like storyboarding them.
Yeah.
So they're doing art. They're doing creative writing. But then they actually have to get up and tell them rather. Which, I've heard some wonderful stories for kids that are making up their own little folk tales. There was one from South Ronaldsay that was just brilliant. Can't quite remember it all in detail, but there was a troll called Mr. Troll, a.k.a. Pickle, and he had a girlfriend who was quite, well, for a troll, quite good looking. He, on the other hand, was no beauty. He was huge and fat and ugly and had mold in his belly button. And so he ended up, he helped a fairy who granted him a wish, and so he wished that his girlfriend could become more beautiful than she was, and so he did that. But then she dumped him and went off with another troll that looked like Elvis. And then he went back and he tried to find this spell to make himself beautiful, but it made him 10 times uglier with even more mold in his belly button. So he went and beat up Elvis troll instead. So, happy ending.
Happy ending for someone. Yeah, perfect. Yeah.
So,
I love that. I love the sort of the complete unpredictability of what's going to come out, particularly with children. And just unpacking a box of treasures and letting people start talking.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. But as you were saying, it's that telling the story is so different from everything else you've done in the process up to that point. And that's the real jumping off the cliff moment.
Mm-hmm. Well, what that school did, and this was quite a while ago, was they got groups of 2 or 3 kids. So that the one kid would have the one bit of the story, the next bit would have the other bit. Mm-hmm. And it meant that you were there with your pals. Yes. So you weren't, it wasn't you with a spotlight on you and everybody staring at you. You know, you had your backup, you had your buddies. Yes. And, but they said, no, this communication skills is getting to be a problem these days because of, you know, mobiles and texts and such like. And so actual storytelling is something that is very useful.
And I think people are increasingly aware of that, and I think increasingly fascinated by the power of somebody just sitting there talking to however many people and telling them a story. I still find quite a lot of people expect us to be reading from a book. Yeah. And are quite saying, you don't need a book. It's about, no, that's reading a story, which has its own power and its own special thing. But I'm a storyteller. My job is to tell them. So what story do you tell? And you think, well, I do have more than one. I just think it's one of those, just be calm. Just be calm, be tranquil, keep walking.
The Pit and the Pendulum by Edgar Allan Poe.
Yes.
Yeah, dumbass. For the primary one children.
Yes. And then we'll try the Iliad or maybe the Odyssey. Yeah. Just keep going. You don't need to go home tonight, do you? Yeah.
No, but it's wonderful working with kids, and I'll probably still carry on doing it in some shape or form, but I used to do it through work, but I don't work anymore.
Escape.
Mind you, some people would say that difficult to tell the difference.
Yes.
You know. How can I tell the difference between normal and retired me?
Yes. Yeah. Anyway. Yeah, I know the feeling.
Yes.
But it's also then, in some ways, not that it's easier to tell stories to children, but telling stories to adult audience is a different experience. And watching that same sense of enchantment take hold of an adult audience is wonderful. And just, I was doing, telling stories for a group, at home. And it was wonderful because it was one of those times you could watch people sort of sinking into it, just sort of relaxing into the whole thing. And there was one person who he can't do that. He can't do that. Oh, that's wrong. And it was just, it's all right. Wait. It was just calm down. It's all right. Just wait for the next bit. You sure? Yeah, we'll be fine. But I love it. I just love that. It's working well when you've got them. Yeah.
The great pulling at the big armaments for me has always been a selkie story, because that resonates so much with women and girls.
Yeah.
Because a few days ago I was at the school in the Hop, and said, I'll tell a selkie story. And again, it's the same thing that I've seen hundreds of times. The wee girls all gone, oh. And so it's resonates.
And also so often tragic in all sorts of levels. I got asked to do a selkie story as an extra to a P6-7 group in the Highlands. So they knew what they were asking for. And we were due to finish. It was lunchtime, and the teacher was just nodding at the back saying, yeah, it's fine. Keep going. And it was lovely because, I said, yes, of course. So, that once upon a time, and they all lay down. By the end of it, I felt like I was telling to a group of seals, because there's just these people just sort of completely relaxed all over the floor. And you thought, but yeah, selkies. Selkie in particular, I think, is something special.
Mm.
There's an enchantment there that very little else touches.
Mm-hmm.
And it's...
Yeah. It was strange recently that there was, because they'd just done this collection of stamps, the Royal Mail, which has got folklore creatures on it. And they had selkies on it. And a friend of mine on the Storytelling Festival group had put this up and said, because somebody said, Orkney's represented it with selkies. And then somebody came in on the chat and there was like Facebook outrage. Going, oh no, they're Irish, and it's like, for God's sake, so it's like kind of claiming them for their own and all that. And it's like stories, they call them migratory legends because they migrate with people.
Mm-hmm.
FFS. But anyway.
Yeah.
No, I you should leave it in.
He didn't actually say anything.
No, I didn't. I just
very restrained.
Yeah.
I'm sort of on the lack of restraint. I was we were doing a storytelling festival in Milton Keynes a long time ago, and I was one of the last tellers. We were way past any sort of watershed. Mm-hmm. It was sort of 11 o'clock. And it was one of those, do people mind if I just tell some really rude stories? And they went, no. And somebody still took offence in the middle of it. It was one of those, yes, I'm from Glasgow, of course I'm going to swear.
Mm-hmm.
What were you expecting? Something nice?
Mm-hmm.
My answer usually is, if you want nice, you have to pay more. But I just...
Have you never seen Billy Connolly?
Well, it's also, have you never read a traditional story?
Yeah.
They're not nice.
No, I mean, that's so many of them are so earthy, as we were just discussing before we started recording. My mate Hjorleifr, who has been on this podcast before, was telling stories which were, very, very earthy. But they're not the kind of ones that get into the English translations because it's like, that's inappropriate. Yeah. And it's like, no, it's not inappropriate. It's authentic. It's the word you were looking for there.
Yeah.
So
it's just, I think people sort of assume too much about what a story is going to be. They think the stories are how the stories we tell, the old stories, the soap operas. And just like any soap opera in TV, they're often violent, they're often outrageous, and if you start thinking that, let's say, an Icelandic story is too earthy, for goodness sake, go and look at the Greek myths that you celebrate as classics.
Yeah.
And nobody, well, I'm sure people do bat eyelids at the amount of incest and betrayal and the number of babies born out of other people's legs. And all those things. It's good stories. Good stories.
In the first edition of the Brothers Grimm, they had a story called Playing at Slaughter. I don't know if you...
Oh, I don't know that one. No.
It was cut from the second edition because the Grimms had got married and had wives who were then mothers, and so then they started introducing the wicked stepmother instead of the wicked mother. They actually changed it from the first one. Hansel and Gretel, it wasn't the stepmother, it was the mother that said, we've got to get rid of these kids because we don't have any food. So then they thought, a mother would never do that, so they changed it. But Playing at Slaughter there was two bairns, two wee boys, had seen their dad slaughtering a sheep, cut its throat. So the eldest boy got his brother and then slit his throat and killed him. And the wee boy's lying dead on the ground, bleeding away. And the older one starts crying because he's only playing, And the mother, who never liked the middle child too much, was bathing the baby upstairs, saw the eldest child kill the middle one. And she didn't like the oldest child. She liked the middle one was a favourite. So she ran down, grabbed the knife from this crying child and stabbed them in the heart and killed them. And then thought, oh shit, I've left my baby upstairs in the bath. So she ran upstairs, but by that time the baby had drowned. So she hanged herself. And when the husband came home, the whole family's dead, you know. The end.
Yeah.
There's no kind of like...
there's no happily ever. A friend of mine, Martin Palmer, has been translating the ancient Chinese novel, The Water Margin.
Oh, right.
And he's brought me in as his storyteller. So every few months I get 10 chapters to read and to look at the flow and to keep a feel on it, as it were. And it is just fascinating. I mean, we're going to end up with an abridged version because it's epic. But it's utterly ruthless and massacres to order. And one of the most entertaining bits are the innkeepers who cook people. You know, it's one of those sort of
the Sweeney
tropes
Todds
that turn up regularly, but they're heroes. You know, the innkeeper who does that. You know, there are people that you don't cook, like monks and sort of dancing girls, because they have a hard life anyway. But everyone else you can just chop up and serve in a pie. And it's fascinating. It's a really good heads up on what we think of as heroic morality, you know, because the hero is just, well, no, we'll kill them and we'll kill them and we'll kill his wife and kill all his family and his children and the babies and the servants. Just leave no one alive.
And the pets.
It's just about, you thought if they were tortoises, they'd probably stamp on them. You know, it's amazingly violent.
So you're working on that?
Yep. So it's really interesting. We've just finished, right, this is where are we now? May. We're recording this in May. So we just finished the translation. Martin and Victoria Finlay and myself have sat down and gone through everything. So it's sort of now just about ready to go for approval. So
it's been published, yeah?
It will be probably next year.
You keep us informed about that. Let me know.
We'll come and read you extracts.
Yeah. Do it.
Extracts of grisly bits.
Yeah. Recipes.
Oh, yes. Recipes for people. Yeah.
What could possibly go wrong?
Yeah.
Yes. Shall we go for some poetry?
Should we go for some poetry? I said that I write a lot of poetry. Probably I write poems more than I write stories. And at the same time, poems tend to grow out of stories or experiences that might give stories. So just down the road from where I live, there's a hill fort called Finn Cop. That's, there's not much to see. There's a sort of suggestion of an embankment. And about 12 to 15 years ago, a local heritage group got a heritage lottery grant to do sort of preliminary excavations because no one had ever done that. And it's a classic bit. They couldn't find anything. They tried, you know, in the middle of the middle of the enclosure. And it was only when at the very end of the first year's dig, they thought of digging through the ditches that they started finding skeletons. So they went back the next year and did more work on the ditches. And they didn't have enough money to excavate much, but they found a collection of skeletons that were either old or very young, or there was one that might well be a mother with a newborn infant. And they were all the skeletons were in the bottom of the ditch, most of them huddled with stones on top of them, suggesting they'd been alive when they went in. And nobody knows what happened. There's no story. There's no evidence to follow up to suggest a fight, because these seem to be the non-combatants. But it's the hillside, the hilltop was never used again. It's never been built on. It's sheep graze on it. It had odd bits of limestone kilns at one time or another, but you feel it's always just been left. And as part of Buxton Museum, we did a project that involved Fincop and other local places. And out of my visits to Fincop came an obligation. And I'll come back to that after this. And this poem's called Vigil. We know where the caves are. We know where the bones lie. Long bones and skulls neatly stacked, and figures come drifting out of the dark of 10,000 nights to a small flame on a hilltop. We know this night. We know the wind that blows cold over the ridge. We know the dale deep below. The warren stone holds the river. The old woman watches the pass. The paths were guarded in vain. And on this cold winter night, we know the night, the hill, the darkness. We know this emptiness, this pain. My words are not your words. The stories I tell are not the stories you tell, you told. But passion crosses the space between our lives, our words, heartbeats, echoes. My open hand is filled with the hollow of yours, and I am the only one still with tears to spill. The touch of stone grounds me, the breath of wind inspires me, a tree's promise, a bird's call, and, voiced and voiceless, we sing into the long night. No embrace here, no simple hug, no kiss, no words to share, but I'll tell stories anyway, over a small flame, a warmth to call lost souls home, and here I will sit and share a glass of mead with the ancient dead who step out of the shadows, a love to call lost souls home. So once a year, for some unspeakable reason, on a cold January night, I go and sit on the top of Fincop with a very small flame in a nice safe lantern, because we keep getting wildfires, and a bottle of mead and a box of cake, and tell stories to the darkness and to the ghosts who come and just sit, and nameless people, and they're still there, and it's an obligation.
Wow.
I'm a storyteller. My job is to tell stories and to share stories with people who no one else talks to anymore.
That's beautiful.
So that's Vigil.
Oh, you're set off, Rhonda.
So I should also put in there, because it is one of them, that I've been working with an amazing set of musicians called Gifts from Crows, who we've been doing me recording poems and them writing and playing music that is their response to the poem. And it's called Whispers on the Wind. And you can find it on Bandcamp, and available at all good shops. But you can find it on Bandcamp, Gifts from Crows, and it's a gorgeous collection of music. And
you can send me a link.
I will. And
Show notes.
Yeah.
Yeah, Rhonda's just saying that we'll share a link.
Yeah. So that'd be good.
She's been all coy and shy and sitting in the corner again. I was trying to persuade her to come here and join us as well, but she's going, you do that. I tried it.
Right, you did.
Well, that's beautiful. So I've just written the text for Iron Age and Picts Gallery at the museum.
Oh, yes,
It's just opened, well, last Saturday. We are on Tuesday at the moment.
Oh, it is, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I would have said it was Thursday if somebody asked.
This,
I know it's terrible.
Yeah, it's just...
Yeah.
But, I mean, there is very, very strange ritual practices going in the Iron Age. And an association as well with the Neolithic. They build brochs over the top of Neolithic tombs or roundhouses associated with tombs or over tombs. But, they're sort of... The one at Quantinus is really weird because you have a big Neolithic tomb and they built a roundhouse in front of it with a doorway that went in through the passage of the tomb.
Oh,
and it's still full of bones. And they never touched the bones, but they accessed it. It's like accessing ancestors.
Yes. Yeah. And you thought, was it there as a place where you could go and commune with the ancient ones? Or places like, is it Clachallan on South Uis, where they thought they found mummies.
Oh, yes. That's
and it was,
but
they were composite skeletons made up of bones from different times, buried under the floor of, I think, an Iron Age house.
They did find that there was, they thought, Bronze Age mummies, where people had actually been bound up into a kind of a fetal position.
Yeah.
And then probably dried out over a fire and sort of smoked, but then stolen and taken away.
Yeah, and just
and so it's and in Iron Age sites you get burials or just human bones in context, like at the cairns in South Ronaldsay. They found a hollowed out whale vertebra that had an old woman's mandible, so jawbone inside it. And then there was two red deer antlers placed inside that, then resting against each other so that they sort of left it. It was a ritual deposit when they were closing the place. It was like a closure sort of thing. But weird stuff goes on in the Iron Age.
There's, again, near where I live, there's, trying to remember the names now. There was a burial mound called Liff's Low that was excavated, I think, 19th century. My apologies for getting all the dates wrong here. And there's very little of the mound left. But a full male skeleton was found there with various artifacts. But literally a couple of 100 yards away is the village of Biggin. And I was doing some work in Biggin School for Buxton Museum. And what was really exciting was the fact that the children at Biggin Primary School, they all knew about the excavation, and they knew it in the body. But he was theirs. He wasn't Liff's Low man. He was Biggin man. And he was theirs. And so we ended up writing. We became his family and wrote about his burial. So using all the artifacts that the museum had and what they all meant in terms of how the children looked at Dad who died. And then we wrote the lullaby that he would sing to his children. And it was lovely. It was just one of those lots of crazy ideas all piling in at once.
Yeah. This kind of echoes there of Betty Corrigal's grave on Hoy, where this woman from the late 18th century had got pregnant, and her man had buggered off and left her unmarried, and she had tried to drown herself unsuccessfully, and then hanged herself in the byre of the house. And being a suicide, she wasn't allowed to be buried in consecrated soil, so she was buried on the boundary between the parish of Walls and North Walls and Hoy. And she was discovered during peat cutting and moved, but she was still preserved in the peat. And then during the war, she got discovered again by guys digging anti-aircraft battery. And then people used to dig her up during the war.
Yes.
That was kind of, one of these things that happened. And the authorities got to hear about it, and they put down a piece of concrete over the top of the coffin. And she remained there until there was a guy called Harry Berry who came from London originally and lived in Hoy, came up to work on the salvaging of the German fleet between the wars, and then married and stayed there. And he was a painter and used to make all sorts of things, including his own fillings for his teeth. He tried to make his own fillings with lead. And then got ill.
It's surprising that, isn't it?
Yeah. But he made, seems there was no way you could put a gravestone up to her because it's on a peat moss. So it's just spongy ground. So he made a gravestone out of fiberglass, hollow fiberglass that says, "Here lies Betty Corrigal." And that is over her grave there. And people, there is now an interpretation board up to it, of course, and a walkway out to it. But people go out, and when we go, Rhonda always brings some flowers from the garden and lays on the grave as well. So, and if we don't have any flowers from the garden, then we'll just pick something, a wildflower or something, just put on the grave, just because we remember her.
Yes. Oh, it's always nice to remember.
But when there's somebody like that who is from history and is like forgotten, it's like resurrecting them in a way of honouring their memory.
I think more than anything, it's that honouring, it's that sense of respect and thinking, we don't know who you were. We've no idea who you were, what you were like, anything, but you walked the land that we walk now, and hopefully you loved it the way we love it, and we remember that.
Yeah. Got any more poems?
Let's do something more cheerful. I tend to do dark.
I like dark.
I was quite happy.
But I mean,
spiraling into midnight,
absolutely whatever you wish to.
But this, right, let's do one more poem, and then we've been talking about stories. I keep racking my brains saying, what would you tell? What story? If somebody said, what story would you tell?
You don't have
and your mind goes in 50 different directions at once.
But you don't have to tell a story. You can tell several stories.
Oh, that's even more confusing.
I don't want to confuse you.
I think they're right. Yes, I'm still pondering. But this wee poem is called Another Kind of Loving. And it came out of pulling over in the car somewhere in Norfolk on the way to visit a friend and meeting a black poplar tree that was just one of those, oh my God, you're amazing moments. And so this is called Another Kind of Loving. Hands sinking, more mud than earth, hands full, dripping, on my knees in old furrows, wrapped in this field's flesh. Under the arms of a hedgerow poplar, black-barked and bristling, all lumps and muscle. Too claggy for ploughs, too solid for spades, too wet for earth, mud-painted, me. Earth skin, tattooed with tracks and slots, rising like the field awoken, hair a mare's nest of twigs and dreams, arms growing branches, holding antlers, turning, feeling water beneath my feet, mud between my toes, oozing. Grit. Sand on cold skin, wet cold, earth cold, deep bone, heart-stopping cold. And the overwhelming feeling is joy.
Oh, that's lovely.
Yeah, it was. It was like meeting a friend I never met before.
Yeah.
I'm just, delight.
Isn't it wonderful when you can get experiences like that between species? It's not like meeting another human being that you get on with, you see a tree. I don't know if you heard that or not.
I don't know.
No, it was one of
right.
our listener
Without the audience, yeah.
I can't really remember it offhand because it's a very long time ago, but Rhonda was asking about an experience I once had at Sturholmen at the Viking village where I had my toad friend in Sweden, and it's by a side of a lake called Lake Erken, which means the kind of sparkling lake because it does kind of refract light. It's quite a beautiful place. And there's an island in it called Lillholmen. And Sturholmen means the big home, like the big island. And then Lillholmen is a little island. But there was 3 oak trees there that were called, they refer to them as the 3 sisters. And, Christ, I haven't told this in about 15 years, but I probably won't even attempt it, to be quite honest, because it's like, but it was just sitting under those trees the one day, and I was helping a friend out, who was making something, and then they were busy, so I just spent this day sitting with a cup of water and went up to these 3 trees. And I actually found myself asking permission for the trees if I could sit down on one of its roots. And then thought, well, I suppose I should, the only thing I've got is a glass of water, but I should share that. I thought, give him half the glass of water. And then thought, come on, Muriel, we're happy. What's happened to you? But then I made up a creation myth about the whole place and about the people that ran it. So, which brought in all of those things, the island, the lake, the trees. And so, yeah, but like I said, haven't told that. Well, I only ever tell it at Sturholmen, and I haven't been there for quite a while. So. This is meant to be about you, not me.
Well, I heard a story, or I was given a story to tell, from the early days of the world, from a time when there was war between the young gods and the old gods. And Zeus and his brothers Hades and Poseidon were the young gods. And they wanted a world of green grass and beautiful forests and a world where people built temples and honored the gods. But their father Kronos didn't like that. He wanted a world of terror and destruction and violence where he could eat people as he would. And on his side, Kronos had the Titans, the monsters from the early world. And Zeus and Hades and Poseidon were fierce and unstoppable, but they knew they wouldn't win, so they needed allies. And out of all the tribes of the Titans, there were 2 who were slightly less intimidating than the others. They were the Cyclops, the one-eyed giants, who at that time lived in the north of Greece, in the mountains where they kept giant sheep and just enjoyed quiet lives as shepherds. And there were I'm falling over my words this evening. And there were the 100-handed giants that lived deep in the woods. And there, the 100-handed giants liked parties. Because when you have 100 hands, some of your hands can be playing instruments. Some of your hands can be feasting on food. Some of your hands can be holding hands with other hands. The 100-handed giants were party beasts. And Zeus promised the Cyclops and the 100-handed giants safety and the continuity or continuance of their lives. So they joined him, and with their help, Zeus and Hades and Poseidon drove Kronos and the Titans down into Tartarus and bound them there under the mountains at the heart of the world. And on the surface of the world, the grass grew and cities were built and temples raised to praise the gods. But Zeus watched his titanic allies and didn't trust them. He thought, they betrayed Kronos. they might betray me. So he tricked the Cyclops. He tricked them away from their green hills onto hot, dry, dusty desert islands in the middle of the Mediterranean. And there they dwindled and slowly died. And as that happened, the 100-handed giants knew that they'd be next. And they watched the skies and waited for the thunderbolt that might strike them. And they didn't know what to do, so they fled deep into the forests where they used to party. And there they prayed to their mother, Gaia, the earth. And they asked her for help. And as they asked her for help, they felt themselves change as their toes reached down into the ground and their warm, soft skin became hard and dry as stone. And they lifted their arms, and as they lifted their arms became branches, and they opened their hands, and their hands became leaves. And they cried, and even their last tears became wood. And as they rolled down their faces, those tears collected all the weapons the 100-handed giants used to fight with, until as the tears hit the ground, they were armoured like balls of weaponry. The Cyclops are gone now. People have forgotten Zeus and Hades and Poseidon. But the 100-handed giants are still there. They're still around us. Almost everyone knows one of their children. And if you go out and you find the tree whose leaves look like hands and whose seeds are wrapped in balls of spikes, you will find one of the children of the 100-handed giants. And the nicest thing to do is sit in their shade and have a party, because they can't dance anymore.
Oh.
And that story was given to me to tell by a horse chestnut tree.
Oh.
And they say that's where they come from.
I'm reminded of two stories, but the same. There's the story in the Odyssey of when Odysseus and his men end up in Polyphemus' cave, this Polyphemus, the Cyclops. And he puts a great boulder in front of the door so they can't get out, him and his herd of giant sheep.
Yeah.
And and then he sets about eating them, munching them down. And so Odysseus gets these flagons of very strong wine, these skins of strong wine, which you are supposed to water down. Lightweight, I would say.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But fed that to the Cyclops and said, will you have a drink with me, with nobody? And then when he falls asleep, they drive a heated, pointed stake through his eye, because they need him alive, because they can't get out the cave, because there's a big stone in front of it that only he can move. So then they escape, and of course, he's out roaring to his other brother Cyclops, I've been blinded, I'm in terrible pain, and it's nobody's fault.
Yeah.
And they went, well, shut up then.
Yeah.
And then, of course, Odysseus has to brag then, it's me, it's Odysseus. And then, of course, Poseidon, who's their dad, hears about it and gets annoyed and slightly delays his journey home.
Yes, just a bit. A few years.
In Orkney, there was a story from the Bay of Scale, down where Skara Brae is.
Yeah.
There was a watermill there. There used to be a giant, big Victorian watermill there. I don't know, it's probably an earlier mill.
Yeah.
But that one isn't there anymore because of coastal erosion, which is a big problem around here. But there was an old woman who was around begging one day, and she couldn't get any meal, any flour, because they had the same story everywhere. The Finn folk who live under the sea, taken a kind of a liking to this earth food, this grain.
Yes, yeah.
So they used to come and raid the mill and terrify the miller. So he had basically locked the place up and left. So there was no one to ground their barley into flour. And she says, well, I could help you out if you give me a pot with some water, some kale, a ladle, fire, and a spinning wheel with some wool. So they give her all these things, and she sets up in the mill, spinning away and boiling this big pot of kale over the fire. And the Finfolk can see the light on in the mill and think, the miller's back, we'll get some of that nice stuff that we like to eat. So they went up and searched the place, but couldn't find any sign of any meal or miller. But the one guy came in the room and he did see this old woman sitting by the fire and spinning, and he'd never seen anything like that before. So he sat down next to her and he said, what's your name? And she said, Sell in the mill, meaning myself in the mill. And with that, she scoops up a big ladle full of boiling water and kale and throws it over his legs and burns him. And he runs out screaming. And the rest of them flee the building as well in panic. And then they said to their friends, so, what's wrong? What happened? And he said, I'm terribly burnt. Who did it? It was Sell in the mill. And they said, well, if Sail did it, let's sail away in the waters with it. And then away they went, and they never bothered the mill again. So after that, they always hung up a casey, a straw basket, by the door. And everybody that went there to get their meal ground would leave a portion for the old woman so she would never have to beg again. But again, it's exactly, it's the same thing, but from sort of Bronze Age Greece to 19th century Orkney.
And I think stories everywhere. And there's the story of Fincastle Mill, which works on exactly the same principle that nobody did this to me. Yeah. Or me, myself, did this to me. But it's also mills, isn't it? Millers and blacksmiths as really significant places. I mean, millers or mills, blacksmiths, I think, and smithies were sort of safe magical places. Whereas mills always seem to be almost like meeting points. There's a number of stories where there's something wants access to the flour. How do you think it's fascinating?
Well, I mean, both blacksmith shops and mills were places where people gathered and congregated and chatted and swapped stories and such like. And there would be, if they were molten barley, then you would have a fire on. And in a forge, obviously, you've got in the smithy, you've got the forge going, so you've got heat. So you go there.
Yes, you go and sit. Yeah. But I'm just thinking it from as a human, you tell stories in the smithy, but the magical people don't risk the iron of a smithy. No. Whereas a mill is stone. It's stone and flour and food, and we can get food, and let's just, you just go and scare the wits out of that one and run off with it. That had made me think of something else. It was a blacksmith story, actually, and it started off with young man, really good blacksmith, really helpful blacksmith. I mean, let's call him Jack, just because it's a good name for stories. And Jack was one of those people who it always seemed that nothing was too much trouble. If you needed something doing, he'd do it. And if you needed something working, he'd work it. But then, there was one day, and it was the end of the day, and it had been a long day, and he just wanted to go home and have his dinner. And he was just shutting up his forge when he heard a horse sort of clop up outside, and he thought, oh no, it's a traveller. I can tell by the sound he's thrown a shoe. All right. And he opened the door of the forge, and there was a horse. There was a horse as white as snow, as white as clouds, as white as milk. And Jack just stood for a moment staring. It was like moonlight had taken shape and was standing in front of him. And the rider on the horse was as handsome as the horse, and he looked down at Jack and said, I'm afraid my horse has thrown a shoe. Can you do something? And Jack thought, nope, I want to go home and have my dinner, but you must have a bit of money about you. This is worth doing. So he got his tools out. He did his business. He gave the horse a beautiful new shoe. And as he stood there sort of saying, yeah, that's it. Yeah, all done. You can go on your way now, sir. You can go on your way now, sir. You could go on your way and show a bit of appreciation, perhaps. And the rider just looked down at Jack and said, thank you, Jack. I'm afraid I haven't got any money. But I'll give you... No, I won't. If you could wish for anything, young man, what would you wish for? And Jack didn't think about it. He just said, I would wish that I could live my life over again. And the rider just smiled and rode off. And Jack thought, well, that was a waste of time. And he shut up the forge, and he went home, and he had his dinner, and he went to bed. And in the morning, when he woke up, he felt different. He realised he was younger. Not a baby, not a child, not even a boy. He was a young man. He was just at that nice sort of 18-year-old unstoppable age. And he just thought, I get to live my life over again. Right, that does it. This time, he wasn't nice. This time, he didn't help. This time, he was the one who nicked the old woman shopping and then pushed her into the street. He was the one who drank all the beer in the pub. He was the one. Anything that could go wrong, Jack did it. And this went on until Jack had finally worked out how to rob a bank. So he did. And he had a whole big bag of gold, and he dragged it out to the top of the stairs, leading down from the bank building to the street below. As he got to the top of the stairs, he tripped and bounced all the way down the stairs until he landed on the bottom step and thought, oh, for goodness sake. And as he looked back up the steps, he saw the bag of gold balanced on that top step. Just tip over. And it came rolling down and crushed him dead. And Jack's spirit got up and went, oh, okay. Oh, I'm dead. Oh, I get to go to heaven. So he went up that long flight of stairs to the pearly gates, and there at the pearly gates there was a certain gentleman dressed in white looking at him, going, sorry, you're not coming in here. And Jack said, but I'm dead. And the angel said, well, yeah, you're dead, but you're not coming in here. You've been horrible. You don't belong to us, you belong to them. You're downstairs. Go on, all the way down. No, keep going. No, that's Earth. Yeah, just turn round. The stairs you need are right behind you now. So Jack went down into the darkness, and deeper, until he got to the strange, twisted, pinched little sort of door of hell. And he knocked on it, and the door didn't open, but just a little grill in it opened, and a suspicious-looking demon looked out and went, well, who are you and what do you want? And Jack said, well, I'm Jack. I've been sent here because the guy at the gate of heaven said I wasn't good enough to get in there. And the demon looked at him and said, I know you, you're that Jack. And Jack went, yes. And the demon said, you're not coming in here. And Jack said, but why not? I'm wicked. And the demon said, yes, but you cause trouble. Not having you in here, you'll upset people. And Jack said, but isn't that what's meant to happen? You're hell. And the demon said, we're hell, but we have very strict rules. And we're not letting you in because we don't trust you. Bugger off. And Jack went, what am I meant to do? I mean, you don't want me. Heaven doesn't want me. What am I meant to do? And the demon just looked at him and smiled and said, tell you what, boy. Hold out your hand. Cautiously, nervously, Jack did, and the demon reached pointy fingers through the grill in the door and just dropped a tiny lump of burning hell coal onto Jack's hand. It didn't burn him. It was burning. There was a flame, but he didn't hurt. And the demon said, take that. Go back up to the everyday world. When you get there, see what colour the flame is. When the flame changes colour again, you'll know you've either been good enough to get into heaven or the right sort of bad to get in here. But for now, bugger off, we don't want you. So Jack slowly walked back up the stairs out of hell. And as he stood in the sunlight, he saw that little ball of burning red hellfire fade into a pale sort of blue-white, almost like moonlight. And as it did, he saw his ghostly self almost disappear till the only thing that anyone would really see was that little flickering, dancing flame. And Jack wandered out of the village where he died and out into the moors. And he's still out there now. And if you're walking across the moor late at night, you might see a little blue-white flickering flame. And it's Jack. And he might lead you to safety if you're lost and get a point towards getting into heaven. Or he might lead you into a bog and let you sink and get a point towards going to hell. All you can do is decide whether to trust the will-o'-the-wisp or not.
I
like that.
Yeah.
I like that.
Few stories about them will-o'-the-wisps.
There's all sorts. Oh, they're just fascinating. It's really good. Well, they're an enchantment themselves, aren't they? Just that flickering.
I've never seen it either. We don't get it up here. But there was a story I heard once about a fella who was a sailor in World War One, and because Scapa Flow here, main naval base.
Yeah.
He was ashore in Kirkwall on leave, and he got down to the corner of Albert Street and Bridge Street, and it was in winter, and he slipped on the ice and fell over backwards and smacked his head on a little sort of corner post thing. It's kind of like a little cone of concrete that's on the corner of a building, so that if you hit it with a horse and cart, then you didn't sort of smash the thing out, just sort of skidded off the side of it. Smacked his head on that, and he was out cold, and somebody found him. And across the road from where he was what used to be a bank. I think it was the commercial bank. But anyway, they had a boiler room in it that had a furnace for keeping the building warm. So he was taken in there anyway to be laid down and keep warm. And when he woke up, he saw this guy standing there shoveling coal in the furnace. And the fella said, "Oh, hello, you're back with us again." He said, "What are you fae?" And he said, "Well, Mr. Nick, I was born in Glasgow, but I died in Kirkwall." That's allegedly a true story.
Well, it feels right, doesn't it? It feels like it should.
Yeah. You don't want to ruin a good story with facts anyway, do you? Mm-hmm.
There's a story I've been telling on this tour that is one of those ones that you think, how old is this? Or is this just... Has somebody just put a cup... It's got all those themes that turn up everywhere else. You think, has somebody just sort of done a quick paste job? Because there's a place near Elgin called Duffus Castle. And it's wonderful because it's sort of... It's at all the wrong angles. I think they must have built a castle on a mound, and then there was a degree of subsidence. It looks drunken. And by all accounts, one of its early lords was just as drunken. But he was out one day and he felt the wind coming whirling past him, and it was full of bits of debris, and he heard little voices shouting, "Horse and hattock, horse and hattock." And he thought, oh well. So he shouted horse and hattock too, and was at once picked up and whisked away, and sort of opened his eyes and came to himself again in a cellar somewhere, and surrounded by lots of fairies who were partaking of the cellar's sort of collection of wine. And so the laird joined in and drank himself into oblivion and fell asleep. And when he woke up, he found the fairies had gone and left him there. But that he was surrounded by guards who took him out and dragged him in front of the king. And he found he was in Paris. And everyone was speaking French, which he didn't. And he did explain himself, and it turns out that the King of France at that time liked a good story. So that they gave him the goblet he'd been drinking out of when they found him. Or the goblet that was in his hand, because he was unconscious when they found him. And sent him back to the castle. And they say that they kept the goblet in the family while the castle collapsed, and while the family all moved to a much more sensible manor house nearby. But then now the goblet's lost. But it's just one of those odd little stories you tell, and you tell to a group, and they go, "Oh, yes, I'm sure that happened." So you send them outside and you try the horse and hattock bit. Let's see, because that's one of those phrases that turns up everywhere. Certainly in lots of the witch trials, that's how you travel. If you're a Scottish witch, you don't use broomsticks. You use yarrow stalks and things like that.
The trowels in Orkney used to ride on bulwins, which is the dried stem of a dock.
Yes, yeah.
So, yeah. I thought that when you were starting out, it was like the story, London again.
Yes, well, it is. That's what I'm saying. It just feels like it's sort of one of those things that you feel like either that same plot happened to lots of people, or the same story has just done the rounds a few times, been reinterpreted.
I'm sure it has.
I'm sure, yeah.
Most of them have, know. But I love that one with the London again one when the guy, his boat had been damaged and he needed a piece of wood for a keel, and he couldn't find one, and travelled for ages and ages, and was given a shelter in this house with his 3 old women that didn't give him anything to eat, and he's in this room, and there's just a big wooden kist in it, a big chest, and they come in when they think he's asleep, and they open it and put a red hat on and say London again, and they disappear up the chimney and gone. And so after they've left, he goes and helps himself in the kitchen and gets something to eat, and then decides to try one of these hats, because there's a whole box of them. And then he flies up the chimney, and he's in this cellar in London, and he gets drunk. And then they're there drinking as well, but they bugger off, and he wakes up in the morning with all these people around him saying, "Here's the guy that's been stealing our wine for the last, years. We've been trying to catch him." So he gets wheeled off and is found guilty and is sentenced to death. And he's up on the scaffold, and he's got the rope around his neck, and then he says, remembers the hat, and he says, do you have a last request? Can I wear my lucky hat? So he puts the hat on, and then he says, sort of Lewis again, or whatever it is. because it's Kintail again as
Yeah.
well in some stories, I think. And the whole scaffolding and the hangman and all fly up through the air, and he pushes the hangman off
Of course, yeah.
and arrives back at his house.
Mm-hmm.
And he's delighted then because he's got the piece of wood
Yes.
to repair his boat. And his wife was complaining that she needed a new rope for the coup because the band in the byre was broken. So and he had the noose around his neck, so he was able to tie up the noose. Hopefully, he actually put a knot on it to stop it from tightening.
Yes, you do.
And strangle his coup. Yeah. That would be very bad husbandry for...
Mm.
Very unprofessional to have dead air.
Dead air. Yes, there was a moment of reflective silence.
Yeah.
Or that was a break for the adverts. People.
Oh, yeah.
And we were very let down by Rhonda, who didn't suddenly spring up and leap into action and try and sell us something.
Well, maybe somebody would be happy if we tried to sell something, but since we're not getting any sponsorship from anyone, so
nobody loves you. That's what it is.
No, nobody loves us.
Nobody loves us.
Well, people would have discerning tastes, you know.
That's yes. Let's do an right. I live in Buxton in Derbyshire, and where we live right on the edge of the Peak District National Park. And there's a place I go to called Goldsitch Moss, which is just this sort of, it's not a huge expanse, but it's a nice soggy bit in good wet weather, with a ridge with amazing gritstone rocks. And if you just go and sit there, I go there and sit and watch trolls take shape out of all these huge lumps of rock. And because you end up sitting quite quietly, the ravens just sit and watch you.
Mm.
And for me, I think it's the ravens that do the link, but they then tie Goldsitch Moss and me back to Orkney. And it just feels like it's Odin and that whole sort of north. Yeah, I know. For anyone who's never visited this house and this room, there's a great big raven sitting on the wall watching us.
And he's called Odin.
Odin. But for me, that connection's always strong. So this is called One Bright Beady Eye. Goldsitch moss trembles with life, a vibrant, simmering shimmer of sphagnum green. Willow holds the edge of the frog-calling bog, and birch climbs the crags, trailing a leaf fall of delicate blades, while bilberry coyly flirts in purple, seducing visitors into impromptu, lip-stained feasts. Heather's leaves and scented flowers belie the twisted determination of rope roots, knotting rock to peat, tying the world together. While Odin sits on a gritstone throne, watching the world go by through one bright black beady eye. Barely the beat of a raven's wing to carry his will from memory to thought, from the moss to the sea. Wet skins, take a breath, barely the draw of a longship's oars from mid-how to Gurness. The sail flaps, billows into blowing cheeks, straining, slowly, reluctantly, the prow yields to the wind, lifting, storm runner, surge cutter, foam rider, wave breaker, the sound swells, races, lifts the longship, runs, drops suddenly into the turquoise calm of a seal-wife bay behind the holy island. Odin broods on his gritstone throne, watching the world through one bright black eye, pecking holes in my heart. But Freyr picks a path into my soul, and I am filled by the hope of a god made of wind and oak leaves, and the boar who bristles in the thicket.
Wonderful. I just made up a backstory for an AI Viking woman in the museum.
Yes.
You've
She's
seen
wonderful. I met her
Ragnar.
this morning.
Mhm.
Yes, we had a chat about ravens.
Did she ask about me or anything?
She didn't say. I should have said I'm visiting Tom. You remember him? You know, he wrote your story.
Yeah.
If I'm back in, I might actually be in tomorrow. If I do, I'll sidle up to her and whisper.
I always used to refer to her to Rhonda as my other woman.
Yes. But she was great. It's going to be really interesting to see how people respond to her.
Yeah.
And how her AI sort of takes on board.
Yeah, because there was once I actually had a conversation with her. They were filming it. And she was asking, I was saying about like having friends over and you know, what I was cooking and all that. She was sort of like, what's your favourite food?
So she
like
actually initiated the question. That's
so
interesting, isn't it?
I said, well, I like shellfish, you know. So I said, and so she was sort of saying, and you know, like, sort of, how are you preparing it? And I went, well, I was going to do it in cream. And so I said, well, onions and maybe some leeks or and some cream, and then just like keep it simple, and then scallops and that. And then she was like doing a bit of butter and all that, and she was saying, she was referring to the ingredients and such, like, you know, bloody hell. But she is a vulva, a priestess of Freya.
Yes.
So that's why I brought that in, because he mentioned Freyr.
Well, it's not. It's Freyr, her brother.
Oh, Freyr. Right, yeah. Freyr with them.
Yeah, but the R at the end rather than the I just think they're a fascinating pair. You used to live in a house called Vanaheim, so two of the Vanir.
Yeah. Which they actually reckon is probably medieval. They probably they think it was made up by Snorri Sturluson.
Oh, really?
Because we know that Asgard was the home of the Aesir.
Yeah.
But the Vanir didn't actually have a homeland. So you reckon that it was made up by Snorri Sturluson to fill a gap.
Yes.
And so my former home was called Vanaheim.
It was in the clouds.
Yes. Well, that was back in the days when I was like thinking of myself as a sort of fertility and magic god. But
there we go.
Yeah, no, it's just like, you know.
How are the mighty fallen?
Grateful for what I can get.
Absolutely.
But I did come up trumps.
Yes, absolutely.
With the lovely lady in the corner. But, yeah. So, clock's trying to tell us something.
Yeah, I love raven stories. I just think that trickster element that sort of wanders through so many different cultures.
Yeah, because there was one about it being absolutely beautiful at one time. It was all multicolored and had a beautiful voice, and but then flew up and stole fire from the sky for people. And then as it flew down, it got blackened with the heat, and then and its voice became a croak. And then it was condemned to eat the carrion. Then, which I think it was Native American.
It sounds like it. Yeah, and I think it's Native American, or maybe it's further north, about raven and snowy owl, and deciding they were really rather plain because they were both as white as the snow, and they wanted patterns, so they went and stole some charcoal from a fire, and a raven did a beautiful pattern on snowy owl, and there was all those lovely sort of crescent moons and snowy owl. I thought, oh right, I'll do you now, Raven. So she started on Raven's feet and did Raven's lovely white feet, but shiny and black, and Raven's go, oh, look at my feet, my feet are brilliant feet, look at my feet, oh, I've got great feet. And Snowy Owl was going, can I do the rest of you now? I've got a really nice idea for stripes and spots. And Raven's going, I love my feet, I really like these feet are great feet, these are brilliant feet. And Snowy Owl was going, do you think you could, will you just sit still? And Raven's still squawking about his feet, so Snowy Owl just picked up the pot of charcoal and dumped it on Raven. So Raven ended up completely black. and has been ever since. I just thought, yes, thank you. Yeah.
It'd be an inspiration for a generation of goths.
Absolutely, yes.
I have a feeling we've probably held you up quite a bit because, I mean, you know, you're sort of over for a bite to eat and all that, and then you get press gang doing one of those.
Yeah. Yes, I should make a move, I think. Before I go, one thing I should, because I think this will be recorded. Not this will be recorded. We've got an event coming up in London with the Creativity Conference, where the Creativity Conference sets out to explore. It seems a bit obvious to explore creativity, but not saying this is how you do things. It's getting creative people to talk about what inspires them and how you manage your creativity, how you maintain it, what you do to nurture it. So it's a really good thing for storytellers, poets, artists to stop and step back from this is my practice, but how do I nurture it? But within that, I'll be doing a presentation within that big theme. We want to have a panel about storytelling, about why we tell stories and the difference between telling old stories or telling traditional stories and the way storytelling as a term is used almost as jargon now. Because everything's telling stories, everything's storytelling. And I just feel it misses the point.
It's become a buzzword, hasn't it, you know?
And it's that bit that old stories in particular have a magic that nothing else catches. And trying to get us having a conversation around that without sounding like we're a bunch of sour grapes moaning about, well, it was proper storytellings about this sort of thing, and it's not about all that journalism you do.
My day, darling.
Yes, oh, darling. Ever. Whatever. But I think it'll be really interesting, and usually Creativity Conference events are recorded, so hopefully people will be able to find it. So that's late June. We're doing that in London. So hopefully it will be accessible on the web.
Well, we'll put up a link to it.
Well, yeah, the thing too is I'll send you stuff, all the links to my pages, and then it will go up on there. Delighted. But it'll be good.
Yeah.
It's always good to have a natter about storytelling.
Well,
why we do it and what we do. And
it's like when people get in touch with me and say, any chance of talking about Orkneyology saga? And I say, how many hours can you spare?
Yes. I can start at the beginning.
Yeah.
And keep going. Oh, yeah.
But anyway, Gordon, it's been an absolute delight.
It's been great.
Mr.
It's
Toad.
been really good fun. Yes.
And it's marvellous, and look forward to seeing you again next time you're back. And
absolutely.
But yeah, we shall put this out and unleash you on our public.
Oh, please do. I love being unleashed.
I know you do. Gordon, thanks very much.
You are very welcome. Thank you.
Cheers.